اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ياسين والقرآن الحكيم إنك لمن المرسلين على صراط مستقيم. تنزيل العزيز الرحيم لتنذر قوما ما أنذر آباؤهم فهم غافلون. لقد حق القول على أكثرهم فهم لا يؤمنون. إنا جعلنا في أعناقهم أغلالا فهي إلى الأذقان فهم مقمحون. وجعلنا من بين أيديهم سدا ومن خلفهم سدا فأغشيناهم فهم لا يبصرون. وسواء عليهم أنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون. إنما تنذر من اتبع الذكر وخشي الرحمن بالغيب فبشره بمغفرة وأجر كريم. إنا نحن نحيي الموتى ونكتب ما قدموا وآثارهم وكل شيء أحصيناه في إمام مبين. واضرب لهم مثلا أصحاب القرية إذ جاء المرسلون إذ أرسلنا إليهم اثنين فكذبوهما فعززنا بثالث فقالوا إنا إليكم مرسلون. قالوا ما أنتم إلا بشر مثلنا وما أنزل الرحمن من شيء إن أنتم إلا تكذبون. قالوا ربنا يعلم وإنا إليكم لمرسلون وما علينا إلا البلاغ المبين. قالوا إنا تطيرنا بكم لئن لم تنتهوا لنرجمنكم وليمسنكم منا عذاب أليم. قالوا طائركم معكم وإن ذكرتم بل أنتم قوم مسرفون. وجاء من أقصى المدينة رجل يسعى قال يا قوم اتبعوا المرسلين اتبعوا من لا يسألكم أجرا وهم مهتدون. وما لي لا أعبد الذي فطرني وإليه ترجعون. أتخذ من دونه آلهة إن يردني الرحمن بالضر لا تغني عني شفاعتهم شيئا ولا ينقذون. إني إذا لفي ضلال مبين. إني آمنت بربكم فاسمعون. قيل ادخل الجنة قال يا ليت قومي يعلمون بما غفر لربي وجعلني من المكرمين. وما أنزلنا على قوم من بعد من جند من السماء وما كنا منزلين. إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم خامدون. يا حسرة على العباد ما يأتيهم من رسول إلا كانوا به يستهزئون. ألم يروا كم أهلكنا قبلهم من القرون أنهم إليهم لا يرجعون. وإن كل لما جميع لدينا محضرون. وآية لهم الأرض الميتة أحييناها وأخرجنا منها حبا فمنه يأكلون. وجعلنا فيها جنات من نخيل وأعناب وفجرنا فيها من العيون ليأكلوا من ثمر وما عملت أيديهم أفلا يشكرون. سبحان الذي خلق الأزواج كلها مما تنبت الأرض ومن أنفسهم ومما لا يعلمون. وآية لهم الليل نسلك منه النهار فإذا هم مظلمون والشمس تجري لمستقر لها ذلك تقدير العزيز العليم. والقمر قدرناه منازل حتى عاد كالعرجون القديم. لا الشمس ينبغي لها أن تدرك القمر ولا الليل سابق النهار وكل في فلك يسبحون. وآية لهم أن حملنا ذريتهم في الفلك المشحون وخلقنا لهم من مثله ما يركبون. وإن نشاء نغرقهم فلا صريخ لهم ولا هم ينقذون إلا رحمة منا ومتاع إلى حين. وإذا قيل لهم اتقوا ما بين أيديكم وما خلفكم لعلكم ترحمون وما تأتيهم من آية من آيات ربهم إلا كانوا عنها معرضين وإذا قيل لهم أنفقوا مما رزقكم الله قال الذين كفروا للذين آمنوا نطعم من لو يشاء الله أطعمه إن أنتم إلا في ضلال مبين ويقولون متى هذا الوعد إن كنتم صادقين ما ينظرون إلا صيحة واحدة تأخذهم وهم يخصمون فلا يستطيعون توصية ولا إلى أهلهم يرجعون ونفخ في الصور فإذا هم من الأجداث إلى ربهم ينسلون قالوا يا ويلنا من بعثنا من مرقدنا هذا ما وعد الرحمن وصدق المرسلون إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم جميع لدينا محضرون فاليوم لا تظلم نفس شيئا ولا تجزون إلا ما كنتم تعملون إن أصحاب الجنة اليوم في شغل فاكهون هم وأزواجهم في ظلال على الأرائك متكئون لهم فيها فاكهة ولا هم ما يدعون سلام قولا من رب رحيم وامتازوا اليوم أيها المجرمون ألم أعهد إليكم يا بني آدم ألا تعبدوا الشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين وأن اعبدوني هذا صراط مستقيم ولقد أضل منكم جبلا كثيرا أفلم تكونوا تعقلون هذه جهنم التي كنتم توعدون اصلوها اليوم بما كنتم تكفرون اليوم نختم على أفواههم وتكلمنا أيديهم وتشهد أرجلهم بما كانوا يكسبون ولو نشاء لطمسنا على الصراط فأنى يبصرون ولو نشاء لمسخناهم على مكانتهم فما استطاعوا مضيا ولا يرجعون ومن نؤمر نكس في الخلق أفلا يعقلون وما علمناه الشعر وما ينبغي له إن هو إلا ذكر وقرآن مبين لينذر من كان حيا ويحق القول على الكافرين أولم يروا أنا خلقنا لهم مما عملت أيدينا أنعاما فهم لها مالكون وذللناها لهم فمنها ركوبهم ومنها يأكلون ولهم فيها منافع ومشارب أفلا يشكرون واتخذوا من دون الله آلهة لعلهم ينصرون لا يستطيعون نصرهم وهم لهم جند محضرون فلا يحزنك قولهم إنا نعلم ما يسرون وما يعلنون أولم ير الإنسان أنا خلقناه من نطفة فإذا هو خصيم مبين وضرب لنا مثلا ونسي خلقه قال من يحيي العظام وهي رميم قل يحييها الذي أنشأ أول مرة وهو بكل خلق عليم الذي جعل لكم من الشجر الأخضر نارا فإذا أنتم منه توقدون أوليس الذي خلق السماوات والأرض بقادر على أن يخلق مثلهم بلى وهو الخلاق العليم إنما أمره إذا أراد شيئا أن يقول له كن فيكون فسبحان الذي بيده ملكوت كل شيء وإليه ترجعون صدق الله العلي العظيم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد سورة المباركة الفاتحة
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم إني أسألك برحمتك التي وسعت كل شيء وبقوتك التي قهرت بها كل شيء وخضع لها كل شيء وذل لها كل شيء وبجبروتك التي غلبت بها كل شيء وبعزتك التي لا يقوم لها شيء وبعظمتك التي ملأت كل شيء وبسلطانك الذي على كل شيء وبوجهك الباقي بعد فناء كل شيء وبأسمائك التي ملأت أركان كل شيء وبعلمك الذي أحاط بكل شيء وبنور وجهك الذي أضاء له كل شيء. يا نور يا قدوس يا أول الأولين ويا آخر الآخرين. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تهتك العصام. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل النقم. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تغير النعم. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تحبس الدعاء. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل البلاء. اللهم اغفر لي كل ذنب أذنبته وكل خطيئة أخطأتها. اللهم إني أتقرب إليك بذكرك واستشفع بك إلى نفسك وأسألك بجودك أن تدنيني من قربك وأن تزعني شكرك وأن تلهمني ذكرك. اللهم إني أسألك سؤال خاضع متذلل خاشع أن تسامحني وترحمني وتجعلني بقسمك راضيا قانعا وفي جميع الأحوال متواضعا. اللهم وأسألك سؤال من اشتدت نفاقته وأنزل بك عند الشدائد حاجته وعظم فيما عندك رغبته. اللهم عظم سلطانك وعلى مكانك وخفي مكرك وظهر أمرك وغلب قهرك وجرت قدرتك ولا يمكن الفرار من حكومتك. اللهم لا أجد لذنوبي غافرا ولا لقبائحي ساترا ولا لشيء من عملي القبيح بالحسن مبدلا غيرك. لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك وبحمدك. ظلمت نفسي وتجرأت بجهلي وسكنت إلى قديم ذكرك لي ومنك علي. اللهم مولاي كم من قبيح سترت وكم من فادح من البلاء أقلت وكم من عثار وقيت وكم من مكروه دفعت وكم من ثناء جميل لست أهلا له نشرت. اللهم عظم بلائي وافرط بي سوحاني وقصرت بي أعمالي وقعدت بي أغلالي وحبسني عن نفعي بعد أملي وخدعتني الدنيا بغرورها ونفسي بخيانتها ومطالي. يا سيدي فأسألك بعزتك ألا يحجب عنك دعائي سوء عملي وفعالي ولا تفضحني بخفي ما اطلعت عليه من سر، ولا تعاجلني بالعقوبة على ما عملته في خلواتي من سوء فعلي وإساءتي ودوام تفريطي وجهالتي وكثرة شهواتي وغفلتي. وكن اللهم بعزتك لي في كل الأحوال رؤوفا، وعلي في جميع الأمور عطوفا. إلهي وربي من لي غيرك، أسأله كشف ضري والنظر في أمري. إلهي ومولاي، أجريت علي حكما اتبعت فيه هوى نفسي، ولم أحترس فيه من تزيين عدوي، فغرني بما أهوى وسعده على ذلك القضاء، فتجاوزت بما جرى علي من ذلك مع حدودك، وخالفت بعض أوامرك. فلك الحمد علي في جميع ذلك، ولا حجة لي فيما جرى علي فيه قضاؤك، والزمني حكمك وبلاؤك. وقد أتيتك يا إلهي بعد تقصيري وإسرافي على نفسي، معتذرا نادما منكسرا مستقيلا مستغفرا منيبا مقرا مذعنا معترفا. لا أجد مفرا مما كان مني، ولا مفزعا أتوجه إليه في أمري غير قبولك عذري وإدخالك إياي في سعة من رحمتك. اللهم فاقبل عذري وارحم شدة ضري، وفكني من شد وثاقي. يا رب ارحم ضعف بدني ورقة جلدي ودقة عظمي. يا من بدا خلقي وذكري وتربيتي وبري وتغذيتي، هبني لابتداء كرمك وسالف برك بي. يا إلهي وسيدي وربي، أتراك معذبي بنارك بعد توحيدك، وبعد من طوى عليه بقلبي من معرفتك، ولهج به لساني من ذكرك، واعتقده ضميري من حبك، وبعد صدق اعترافي ودعائي خاضعا لربوبيتك. هيهات أنت أكرم من أن تضيع من ربيت، أو تبعد من أدنيت، أو تشرد من ناويت، أو تسلم إلى البلاء من كفيته ورحمت. وليت الشعر يا سيدي وإلهي ومولاي، أتسلط النار على وجوه قرت لعظمتك ساجدة، وعلى ألسن نطقت بتوحيدك صادقة وبشكرك مادحة، وعلى قلوب اعترفت بإلهيتك محققة، وعلى ضمائر حوت من العلم بك حتى صارت خاشعة، وعلى جوارح سعت إلى أوطان تعبدك طائعة، وأشارت باستغفارك مذعنة. ما هكذا الظن بك، ولا أخبرنا بفضلك عنك يا كريم. يا ربي وأنت تعلم ضعفي عن قليل من بلاء الدنيا وعقوباتها، وما يجري فيها من المكاره على أهلها، على أن ذلك بلاء ومكروه، قليل مكثور، يسير بقاء، قصير مدته. فكيف احتمالي لبلاء الآخرة وجليل وقوع المكاره فيها، وهو بلاء تطول مدته ويدوم مقامه ولا يخفف عن أهله، لأنه لا يكون إلا عن غضبك وانتقامك وسخطك، وهذا ما لا تقوم له السماوات والأرض. يا سيدي فكيف لي وأنا عبدك الضعيف الذليل الحقير المسكين المستكين. يا إلهي وربي وسيدي ومولاي، لأي الأمور إليك أشكو، ولما منها ضج وأبكي، لأليم العذاب وشدتي أم لطول البلاء ومدتي. فلئن صيرتني للعقوبات مع أعدائك وجمعت بيني وبين أهل بلائك، وفرقت بيني وبين أحبائك وأوليائك، فهبني يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي وربي، صبرت على عذابك فكيف أصبر على فراقك، وهبني صبرت على حر نارك فكيف أصبر عن النظر إلى كرامتك. أم كيف أسكن في النار ورجاء عفوك، فبعزتك يا سيدي ومولاي أقسم صادقا لئن تركتني ناطقا لأضجن إليك بين أهلها ضجيج الآملين، ولا أصرخن إليك صراخ المستصرخين، ولا أبكين عليك بكاء الفاقدين، ولو نادينك أين كنت يا ولي المؤمنين. يا غاية آمال العارفين، يا غياث المستغيثين، يا حبيب قلوب الصادقين، ويا إله العالمين، أفتراك سبحانك يا إلهي وبحمدك تسمع فيها صوت عبد مسلم سجن فيها بمخالفته وذاق طعم عذابها بمعصيته، وحبس بين أطباقها بجرمه وجريرته، وهو يضج إليك ضجيج مؤمل لرحمتك، ويناديك بلسان أهل توحيدك، ويتوسل إليك بربوبيتك. يا مولاي فكيف يبقى في العذاب وهو يرجو ما سلف من حلمك؟ أم كيف تؤلمه النار وهو يأمل فضلك ورحمتك؟ أم كيف يحرق لهيبها وأنت تسمع صوته وترى مكانه؟ أم كيف يشتمل عليه زفيرها وأنت تعلم ضعفا؟ أم كيف يتقلقل بين أطباقها وأنت تعلم صدقا؟ أم كيف تزجر زبانيتها وهو يناديك يا ربا؟ أم كيف يرجو فضلك في عتقه منها فتتركه فيها؟ هيهات ما ذلك الظن بك، ولا المعروف من فضلك، ولا مشبه لما عملت به الموحدين من برك وإحسانك، فباليقين أقطع لولا ما حكمت به من تعذيب جاحديك وقضيت به من إخلاد معانديك لجعلت النار كلها بردا وسلاما وما كان لأحد فيها مقرا ولا مقاما لكنك تقدست أسماؤك أقسمت أن تملأها من الكافرين من الجنة والناس أجمعين وأن تخلد فيها المعاندين وأن تجل ثناؤك قلت مبتدئا وتطولت بالإنعام متكرما أفمن كان مؤمنا كمن كان فاسقا لا يستوون إلهي وسيدي فأسألك بالقدرة التي قدرتها وبالقضية التي حتمتها وحكمتها وغلبت من عليه أجريتها أن تهب لي في هذه الليلة وفي هذه الساعة كل جرم أجرمته وكل ذنب أذنبته وكل قبيح أسررته وكل جهل عملته كتمته وأعلنته أخفيته أو أظهرته وكل سيئة أمرت بإثباتها الكرام الكاتبين الذين وكلتهم بحفظ ما يكون مني وجعلتهم شهودا علي مع جوارحي وكنت أنت الرقيب علي من ورائهم والشاهد لما خفي عنهم وبرحمتك أخفيت وبفضلك سترت وأن توفر حظي من كل خير أنزلت أو إحسان فضلت أو بر نشرت أو رزق بسطت أو ذنب تغفره أو خطأ تستره يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي ومالك رقي يا من بيدي ناصيتي يا عليما بضري ومسكنتي يا خبيرا بفقري وفاقتي يا ربي يا ربي يا رب أسألك بحقك وقدسك وأعظم صفاتك وأسمائك أن تجعل أوقاتي من الليل والنهار بذكرك معمورا وبخدمتك موصولا وأعمالي عندك مقبولا حتى تكون أعمالي وأورادي كلها وردا واحدا وحالي في خدمتك سرمدا يا سيدي يا من عليه معولي يا من إليه شكوت أحوالي يا ربي يا ربي يا رب قو على خدمتك جوارحي واشتد على العزيمة جوانحي وهب لي الجد في خشيتك والدوام في الاتصال بخدمتك حتى أسرح إليك في الميادين السابقين وأسرع إليك في المبادرين وأشتاق إلى قربك في المشتاقين وأدنو منك دنو المخلصين وأخافك مخافة الموقنين واجتمع في جوارك مع المؤمنين اللهم ومن أرادني بسوء فارد، ومن كادني فكيد، واجعلني من أحسن عبيدك نصيبا عندك، وأقربهم منزلة منك، وخصم زلفة لديك، فإنه لا ينال ذلك إلا بفضلك. وجد لي بجودك، وعطف علي بمجدك، واحفظني برحمتك، واجعل لساني بذكرك لهجا، وقلبي بحبك متيما، ومن علي بحسن إجابتك، وأقلني عثرتي، واغفر زلتي، فإنك قضيت على عبادك بعبادتك، وأمرتهم بدعائك، وضمنت لهم الإجابة. فإليك يا ربي نصبت وجهي، وإليك يا ربي مددت يدي، فبعزتك استجب لي دعائي، وبلغني مناي، ولا تقطع من فضلك رجائي، واكفني شر الجن والإنس من أعدائي، يا سريع الرضا اغفر لمن لا يملك إلا الدعاء، فإنك فعال لما تشاء، يا من اسمه دواء وذكره شفاء وطاعته غنى، ارحم من رأس ماله الرجاء وسلاحه البكاء، يا سابغ النعم، يا دافع النقام، يا نور المستوحشين في الظلام، يا علما لا يعلم، صل على محمد وآل محمد، وافعل بما أنت أهله، وصلى الله على رسوله والأئمة الميامين من آله، وسلم تسليما كثيرا. سورة المباركة الفاتحة.
محمد وآل محمد صلوات. जवानी में मरने की हसरत है किसकी, ज़ईफ़ी में कांधों पे मैयत है किसकी, खुदा दुश्मनों को ये गम ना दिखाए कभी, ज़ईफ़ी में ये गम कोई निल न पाए कभी, जवां की है मैयत यूं दिल से लगा ले अभी, ये कौन आ रहा है यूं ठोकर खा के अभी। بہن کو یہ مولا کی آواز آئی، اندھیرا ہے آنکھوں میں مجبور بھائی، یہ لاشا اٹھائے یا دل کو سنبھالے ابھی، ذرا بچوں بھیجو کہ میت اٹھا لے ابھی۔ دعا ماں یہ کرتی تھی زندہ رہو تم، پھلو پھولو آباد شاد رہو تم، یہاں ماں دعا میں مصلی بچھائے ابھی، وہاں لاش بیٹے کی خیموں میں آئے ابھی، جو بیٹے کو دیکھا فتح ہوا سینہ، پکاری ماں بس ہوا خاک جینا، جیوں گی میں اب کیسے یہ داغ اٹھا کے ابھی، خدا مجھ کو دنیا میں صبر عطا لے ابھی، تمنا تھی مجھ کو کہ دولہا بناؤں، میرے لال کے سر پہ صحرا سجاؤں، ذرا ٹھہرو ماں اپنی حسرت نکالے ابھی، کہ لاشوں پہ پھولوں کی چادر اڑا لے ابھی، جواں کی ہے میعاد یوں دل سے لگا لے ابھی، یہ کون آ رہا ہے یوں ٹھوکر کھا کے ابھی۔ صلی اللہ علیہ محمد وعلی محمد۔ رحم اللہ من قرأ الفاتحہ۔
بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم۔ Sayyid Hasan Rizvi, respected elders, brothers, sisters in Iman, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Surah Fatiha is requested for all the names listed on the screen and Kul Arwahil Mu'minin wal Mu'minat, Sawab al-Fatiha. Ayatam Ayyajibun is requested for all the names listed on the screen and whoever is in need of it here and elsewhere. Let us all recite it together. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Amman yujibul muztarra idha da'ah wa yakshifu as-su'. Amman yujibul muztarra idha da'ah wa yakshifu as-su'. أَمَّنْ يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ وَيَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ أَمَّنْ يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ وَيَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ أَمَّنْ يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ وَيَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. And Lord, let us invite Sayyid to come forward and recite tonight's Majlis, Par Muhammadin wa ala Muhammad, Salawat.
رحم الله من قرأ الفاتحة بعد. اللهم صل على أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. والحمد لله رب العالمين. والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين شفيع المذنبين رحمة للعالمين سيدنا ونبينا بالقاسم المصطفى محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد عجل فرجه. ثم الصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين. ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين من الأولين والآخرين إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد. صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. مؤمنين مؤمنات, brothers and sisters in Islam and Iman, Salamun alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So continuing, if we have time, we'll continue our topic from last week, but there were a few questions related and semi-related to last week. So we'll try to go through all the Slido questions, and then we have time, we'll continue with our discussion from last week, inshallah. Okay, so first one, so all Sunnis who pray and say salam, their namaz is invalid, doesn't make sense. Yeah, you're right, it doesn't make sense, because it's not true. Their namaz is not invalid. So the idea of valid and invalid, I mean, it's not that simple, right? Right now, we have our own rules, right? Our Shia madhab, we have our rules for, how to pray. And you follow your own marja. If, let's say, for example, your marja says in the third and the fourth rak'ah, you have to recite the tasbihatul arba 3 times. Let's just say that's what your marja says. Somebody else has a different marja, and says that, okay, 1 tasbihatul arba is enough, right? And that's fine. Would you say that, that person's namaz is invalid because they didn't say 3 times? No, they follow a different marja. So they're going to be, they're accountable for those different rules. That same sort of idea applies with other religions, including Sunnis as well. They have their own rules, and they're held accountable to their rules. Now, obviously, with our process of using the teachings of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, we would say that, look, there's issues, there's a problem, but to say that it's invalid or it's not accepted or anything like that, that's not how we discuss it. In fact, in Shia legal theory, in Usul al-Fiqh, they talk about this extensively. Because, there's obviously, especially in the Islamic world, there's a lot of interaction between Sunnis and Shias. Contrary to what, the mainstream media and some other Orientalists would have us believe. But there's a lot of interaction. And that also means fiqhi issues come up. So, for example, if you have a Sunni-Shia marriage, let's say the husband is Sunni and the wife is Shia, and that Sunni husband, their madhab allows them to do the 3, talaq, 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 and that's it. Is that Shia wife now divorced or not? right? I mean, according to her marja, I mean, right, that's not our fiqh. We don't have this 3 talaq idea. But they do have the idea. So our scholars discuss, what do we do when we are interacting with somebody else who has a different set of fiqh, whether it's Sunnis or anybody else, right? So it's a deeper discussion. Generally speaking, we do apply everybody else's rules, right? And we say, look, your rules are, you're accountable to your rules, and usually in mixed marriages, they say, yes, you apply their rules. So for example, if I remember correctly, Ayatul Sistani has this opinion as well. So when you have, let's say, again, a Sunni husband, Shia wife, if the Sunni does pronounce the divorce according to Sunni rules, that's enough for the Shia wife to be considered divorced, for example, right? So yeah, to say that their namaz is invalid doesn't make sense. If they're a Hanafi, they follow Hanafi fiqh. So if they do it according to what the Hanafi say, then it would be valid according to their Hanafi fiqh. Why would you judge them according to a different madhab? It's, it's weird. The same way you wouldn't say, Christians' namaz doesn't count. Of course, their namaz doesn't count because they don't pray namaz like you and I do. It's not a valid question, right? So yes, you're right. It doesn't make sense because it's not something that we would really believe. Okay. Let me see the next one that was related to. Okay. So this one was. Oops. I think I said yes to that one. 1 second. Where'd it go? There we go. Where's the live? There we go. Oh, okay. But by the time you say the last salam, the namaz is over anyway. Why isn't it a normal thing for Shias to say salam to angels? Why isn't it something we Shias are not taught as kids? Okay, so this is 3 in 1 here. So remember, we were talking last week because somebody had previously asked the question, Sunnis, they thought, or most of us had thought that it's the Sunnis that say salam left and right after namaz or during the end of namaz, whatever. We don't do that, right? That was the question. And we explained, as we'll, inshallah, if we have time, we'll continue tonight, that look, we have a similar idea. It's slightly different in terms of our fiqh. Our fiqh rulings are a little bit different. So going by what this questioner is saying, right? But by the time you say the last salam, the namaz is over anyway. Well, not really. You have to finish saying the salam, and then once that final salam is finished, then technically you are out of the salah at that point. So that's why we said that if while you're reciting that final salam, right, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, if during that you turn your head away from the qibla, you just ruined your salah, your salat batil, because you can't leave the qibla during salah. So that's why, according to our fiqh, again our fiqh, forgetting Sunnis right now, if you're a Shia, you turn your head away from salah at any point during salah, your salat is void, you're going to have to do it again. So, yeah, so this person's saying by the time you say the last salam, the namaz is over anyway. No, once it's finished, then that's when the salam is over. So even the 3 takbirs we do at the end, that's after this, that's a ta'qibat, right? That's after the salat. That's a mustahab thing to do after salat is finished, right? It's not a part of the salat technically. So the next part of the question, why isn't it a normal thing for Shias to say salam to angels? I have no idea. I mean, that we'd have to actually trace. This is where academic stuff gets into the picture. Why is it that different communities perform different things culturally? I mean, among Shias. Because as many of you know, if you've been overseas to Iraq or Iran, many of them will do the left and right thing, right? They will look left or turn a little bit left and right. So for them, it seems to be something that's normal. But many of our, Indians, Pakistanis, etc., it's not really there. Most of us don't do that. Now, this is just a guess. I haven't done the academic research. It's a guess. As I said, in the Tawdi al-Masail of, for example, Ayatul Sistani, Hafidhahullah, or most of our other maraji, may Allah protect them all and give them a long life, this one it's not there. You don't find this specific ruling in there. You would only know about this if you had a Farsi or an Arabic version, or again, maybe some other language might have it, I don't know. But at the very least, in Farsi and Arabic, you'll find it. So for them, it's normal. And again, their connection to the ulama, the hawza, is much stronger than for you and I. We don't really have that here. So we're kind of taking, I don't know how to put it, I can't put it politically correctly. I don't think there's a way to do it. But a lot of us are dealing with the crumbs of Islam. I don't know how else to say it. We've been moving from country to country. We've been dealing with various types of scholars. And I'm using that word scholar very loosely. Usually it ends up, we're dealing with preachers, not real ulama, like ulama as in muhaqqiqeen and researchers. We usually are just getting people who have been in the hawza for a few years. I think I mentioned it last time. Basically, they have the equivalent of a bachelor's degree. So when they come and explain Islamic concepts, they're going to go by the basics because they don't know anything else. right? It's good for motivating and giving general information, but if you were to ask them about this thing, they might even give you a strange response like, yes, left and right is for Sunnis only, it's not for Shias. Why? Because they've never themselves done the research, and that can happen with many fiqh issues, unfortunately. So that's possibly why it's not a normal thing for at least some Shias, because we can't say all the Shias. So this individual who's asking it, I would say, if you've gone overseas, you must have seen other Shias doing this. And in fact, we can see other examples. So something that you'll find that most Khoja Jamaats don't do, but others may do. For example, so in Jamaat prayers, after we say Surah Al-Fatiha, right, in Jamaat, it's recommended to say, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, right? But we know it's makruh to say it loud enough for the Imam to hear. And according to some, for anybody else, right? You're supposed to say it quietly. Some communities, especially in like the Desi Indo-Pakistani communities, they say it out loud. If you've ever been there in their Jamaats, it's one of the only communities I've seen. I haven't seen Iraqis do this, Iranians, or any other Arabs do this, or I've never seen a Khoja Jamaat do it unless they are very associated with an Indian-Pakistani Jamaat. I grew up in these kind of centers. So them, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, all out loud. And when I had asked one alim about this, they said, look, it was because a lot of these issues came up because of a sort of Sunni Shia paradigm and conflict in Pakistan or India. Usually it's Pakistan. So because they were doing Ameen out loud, the Shias responded with Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen out loud. So this is again like a half academic answer, but a lot of issues ended up coming up like that. So in places where there really isn't this Sunni Shia like confusion or back and forth, you don't really see this sort of issue or dilemma. Why isn't it something we Shias? Why isn't it something we Shias are not taught as kids? So I think it means why. I think you mean why isn't it something we Shias are taught as kids, right? We don't want a double negative here. So yeah, it'd be nice if we had all learned it, but even in our schooling systems here, what are people going to teach from? The English to the al-Masail. And as we said, is it in there? No. So where do we expect anybody to teach it from? Unless they themselves know Farsi, know Arabic, or have done the research properly, or asked an alim about this so that they could have done that, inshallah. So hopefully that answers it. Another related one, I guess, somebody had said, can you go through the rules of salah, understanding of salah with us? I could, maybe. Probably like a series of lectures, weekly sessions. You covered a little bit last year in Ramadan. That was very informative as well. So yeah, we could possibly do that. Inshallah, we'll have to figure out based on when it makes sense. What I was trying to do before was introduce 1 or 2 issues in every Slido quiz that we would do on Thursdays, right? Just to keep it like that. Because sometimes when we get bombarded with too many rules, it's very, very tough. Even when you're learning a new board game, you can just read that manual, you can read the instructions, and then when you get down to play, you're like, I have no idea what we just said. Can we go back and go through everything, right? So you have to kind of play and learn as you go along. So with these kind of things, it happens as well. Most of us know the basics. So I think some of the things that maybe we haven't heard before, like this ruling, right, about the left and right, or some of the maybe confusing ones, those maybe we can redo. So, for example, tomorrow night, we'll be having our, second family Kahoot night, right? So a lot of the questions related to fasting, inshallah, we're going to bring in that quiz. So hopefully that'll be a refresher for a lot of us, inshallah. Okay, so let me see if I can go through some of these quick ones. Okay, this is another prayer question. Can we wear clothing with animal prints in namaz? You can, but according to most maraji, anything with a face or any sort of print on it is makruh to wear. Now, when you say makruh in ibadah, that just means that the amount of thawab, ajr, and reward is just reduced a little bit, right? That's all. So yeah, you can do it, but it possibly may just reduce the amount of reward that you get. Okay, now let me go this way first. Okay. We all know shaitan is going to be the main gatekeeper or the main guy of Jahannam. Well, I don't know, do we all know that? Does anybody here agree with that statement? No, it's a very Judeo, or I would say very, very Christian understanding, right? Many people depict him as being free and kind of like a prison guard of Jahannam, and nothing will happen to him. Maybe many people depict that, but again, that's not really our understanding of him. Will he be suffering as well because of what he has done? If so, how? Yeah, he's going to burn in hell, very simply. So, again, without going through the whole, shaitani story, we don't want to go through his whole biography, but, he disobeyed, he was supposed to do sujood to Nabi Adam, alayhi salam, he didn't, and then He asked Allah, he should have asked for forgiveness. He didn't, he messed up. Instead, he said, Allah, I ask you by your izzah, I've done all this ibadah, reward me for it. Allah says, okay, what do you want? I want the power to screw with human beings. I want to mess them up. I want to take them off Sirat al-Mustaqim. Allah said, okay, you're basically free until Yawm al-Qiyamah. Right? You are now good to go. You're not going to have any punishment until the day of judgment, until Yawm al-Qiyamah. But then once that happens, then yeah, you're going to get burnt just like everybody else. Oh, sorry, I just saw the thing pop up. It's the Kahoot session. Yeah. Okay. So as I mentioned, that Kahoot session we're having tomorrow night, since it came up now, I might as well mention. So before when we had done it in the first session, we did it. It was YouTube streamed, so there was a 30-second delay, right? So everybody had to wait, even though on your actual app, right? The buzzer was there, but you have to wait 30 seconds for the questions, right? So we had to change the timing. So we decided, let's make it live, right? So that we don't have to, waste 30 seconds waiting for people to respond. So if you just want to watch, you're not interested in participating, then you can just go onto the typical, HIC YouTube channel and just watch, right? But participating is not going to make sense for you. If you want to join, then this link, which we'll try to share also in the HIC YouTube WhatsApp broadcast, and also this same link will be displayed before we started on the HIC YouTube channel. This is the link there, and I believe the password will be Kahoot2, all lowercase. But again, we'll share this stuff as well. That's if you're going to join the Zoom so that you can see the questions come up live, right? So that's if you want to do that. But inshallah, I'll remind you later on, inshallah. Okay. So yeah, Shaitan's going to burn as well. He's going to be just like anybody else. The ones that are in charge of burning is not Shaitan. He's not the manager of hell. That's not what we believe. He's going to be burnt just like many other people. In fact, they say he will be one of the most burnt individuals, right? The eternity in hellfire, he's one of the ones that it's reserved for because of the clear nifaq and kufr that he performed. He knew the truth, he recognized Allah, but he went against a direct command. So many say that he'll be spending an eternity in hellfire. So hopefully that makes sense. Okay. Now we've got two other wonderful questions here. Let's start with this. If you can recite, a salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Okay, let me just do a time check. Okay. How did the idea of muhr come? Was the Prophet using muhr? Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Billions of Sunnis don't use muhr. Are there billions of Sunnis? I don't know. Maybe. Their namaz is not accepted. Muhr came during the time of Imam Hussein. So, a bunch of phrases with question marks. Okay. So, first, in terms of what you're allowed to do sujood on, I don't need to tell you the fiqh. You should all know your fiqh, right? You're allowed to pray. We're supposed to. You have to pray on something that's made from earth, but it can't be eaten and it can't be something that you can wear, right? Now, we also say that, look, the same evidence exists within the Sunni books as well. Now, how they came to the conclusion, we don't care. That's their own stuff, their own legal theory, that's their business. Now, again, we're saying this discussion about their namaz accepted, that's not part of the discussion. They've got their own fiqh, it's between them and Allah. We've got our own fiqh and our own process, let's worry about ourselves, right? Let's not be so concerned with other people and them being accepted and going to heaven or not. We've got our own issues to deal with. Let's worry about whether you and I can get to heaven rather than other people and their salat being accepted or not. So the idea of praying on turba or on earth is obviously from Rasulullah. Yeah, right? He prayed on earth every single time. Now what that earth was varied. It could have been sand. In some narrations it says that what the ashab used to do is, especially when it was hot outside, is that they would take some of that gravel, or these small rocks that they would pray on, they would take it in their hands, either before or during the salah. They'd come there and they'd rub it in their hands while they're praying, and then when they got down to sujood, they'd put that down and then make sujood on that to cool the rocks off, right? Then you have others that, then they instituted the system of using straw mats, right? This was also revealed to Rasulullah that you can go on straw mats as well. So that we see, according to some narrations later on, that they put these straw mats all throughout. They say that Rasulullah had this mini straw mat with him that he used to pray on everywhere, right? So we have all these different ideas. But we never see him praying on carpets, nothing like that, on fabric. It doesn't really exist. There are some hadith which talk about in exceptional cases, some of the companions would use the tahtul hanak, right? That extra kind of thing that goes over, and they would pray on that. But that's an exceptional case. I don't want to get into that. So again, I went through this idea of, again, for Sunnis, we don't care about that. So was the Prophet using muhr? So muhr, again, muhr, turba, these these kind of round discs, that's the discussion. So muhr literally means something that's stamped, right? Even Farsi, Arabic, that's what it's coming from. What they were using then is just that dirt that was there or some rocks or straw. Now, did Rasulullah use a actual baked piece of dirt or clay? We don't seem to have any evidence for anything like that, right? Because in that time, that's sort of what we'd say recommendation of doing sujood on the turba of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. I don't want to say didn't exist, but yeah, I'll put it that way. Just it wasn't there at that time, right? What we see is later on, so according to some narrations, the first two imams that we see are either Imam Sajjad alayhi salam or Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. Now what are they doing? According to narrations, they say that they had some of the turba from the qabr of Imam Hussein, they had it wrapped in a handkerchief and some fabric, and they'd carry that with them. So that wherever they would go, whenever they wanted to pray, they'd open that up and they would pray on this turba. Right? So again, we're talking about dirt here, dust or sand, whatever you want to call it. Not these, again, baked little cookies. That thing didn't exist then. This muhr, turba, sajdaga, whatever you want to call it, this, according to many historians, seems like something that was, I guess, industrialized or manufactured or became popular during the Safavi or Safavid era. That's when they started to, say, okay, look, we can't just grab dirt and put it in our house and pray on that. This is just not going to work out, right? Because it makes a mess in the house, it doesn't really make sense. So why don't we take some of this dirt, right? And again, because of the scarcity, obviously, of the dirt around the qabr of Imam Hussein, we'll take a little bit of that, mix it with some other, we'll, use some other types of chemicals, for example, or other stabilizers. We'll make it into shapes, and that way people can keep it in their house, and their house will be able to stay clean as well, right? And the masajid will stay clean. So factories started to make this. In fact, I just found out today, there was a lot of discussions during the Safavid era about whether this was allowed or not. Because they said, look, is that actually defined as the turba of Imam Hussein? If you take it, mix it with other khaq or other dirt, bake it, is baking it, or is it called, I think it's called the mashwiya. Is that actually considered turbatul Hussein or not? Of course, most of our ulama said it is, whereas maybe one or two had said, no, it doesn't count, you can't do that. But that, again, that's an outdated sort of fatwa that they had. So, to summarize, the actual sort of such like a cookie or a disc and stuff that's being used nowadays, that we could say probably came during the Safavid era. Where the idea of doing sujood on the turba, on the khaq, on that dust or sand from the qabr or the tomb around Imam Hussein alayhi salam, we have evidence from at least Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, and some say Imam Sajjad alayhi salam, at least these two, because they were carrying it around with them. And then of course the idea of how we pray and how we do sujood, this of course comes from Rasulullah, who was always praying on something from earth. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Wow. Okay. Let's keep going, right? Keep powering through. Okay, another one. When was Imam Ali alayhi salatu wasalam's name introduced in the adhan? Again, another historical question. So there's a few different opinions on this. Now, we all should know, let's basically start out with the fatwa. It is not wajib to recite that third shahada in the adhan. It's not wajib. Do you get your acha bacha good boy points if you do it? Yeah, you'll get your thawab if you want. Right? That's no problem, right? Just dhikr of Ali, we know is an ibadah, so that's nothing wrong with that. But the sort of near unanimous consent of our ulama from the beginning till the end is that if it's something, then it's a mustahab part. If your niyyah, while you recite this, is that you think it's a part of the adhan, your adhan is batil, it doesn't count. So we can't have the niyyah that it's a part of the adhan. And I know, unfortunately, I have met some, I guess because they were confused, and they actually did think that it was a part of the adhan. It's not. It's something that was added in. Now the question is, okay, well, where did it get added in from? Was it something that Bilal did, or Rasulullah, or any of the imams? Did they add it in or not? Majority opinion of our ulama is that this is something that came a little later on. When I say a little bit, I'm talking Safavids, that's a lot later on. They say this is something that seemed to have developed then. Either by Alama Majlisi or his father, the older Majlisi. Some say that this was a practice of certain Shias during the time of Shaykh as-Siddiq, because, rahmatullah alayh, because he had mentioned it in his books. But Shaykh as-Siddiq had a very harsh opinion about it. He didn't allow it. And he actually said that the Shias who are doing this, they shouldn't be doing it. They're inserting something in that they shouldn't be, and there's a whole discussion about that. Now again, who is he talking to about that? Again, I don't want to go into the academic details, but some say, look, okay, if Shaykh as-Saduq is mentioning it, that some Shias, you'll say the Ghalis, the ones who are extremists, they were the ones reciting it, that means that, okay, back at that time, meaning around the time of the 12th Imam or that era, there must have been some Shias reciting it at that time. Now where they got it from, that's up for debate. There are some ulama, very few, but there are some who say, based on a few narrations, or they say that there was a book that was written that mentioned that after Ghadir, Salman and Abu Dhar had asked about, okay, now that we have added in the concept of wilaya, it's al-yawm akmaltu lakum dinukum. Islam has been perfected with the concept of wilaya. Now, does the adhan change? And apparently, some say that this is when they were told, either by Rasulullah, that apparently he gave the command to Bilal, or to Abu Dhar, or to Salman, or all three of them, something like that. Again, it's not very clear in the history books. That yes, now when you recite it, you can add in this, because now, again, this will complete your Islam, something like that, right? After you mention, Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, then you may add in this third shahada as well, recognizing the wilayah of Amir al-Mu'mineen. So this is there. But again, this is, most historians say, look, the evidence that they're bringing, it's not really strong. It doesn't seem like that's the case. So it's not really an opinion you're going to hear too much. But it does exist, so I felt, it wouldn't hurt to mention. So again, to summarize this answer, most likely where did it come from? It's something that developed during the Safavi or Safavid era. That's where they started to talk about how it can be mustahab. It seems as though some Shias, as Shaykh as-Saduq said, that it's probably the extremist Shias who were doing this back at that time, and he had a problem with it. And a very small minority of scholars saying there seems to be some evidence that it did come about, and Rasulullah advised that it can be done, and he said it to Bilal, to Salman and Abu Dhar right after Ghadir had taken place. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So I don't think it's worth it to go into a topic with only a few minutes left. So we have 2 more Slido questions that just came in. So I think I'm just going to go through these because we're not going to do a Slido quiz today, because if we're going to have a Kahoot tomorrow, there's no point, right? So, okay. Let's go to this one. Why is food made by Hindu najis? It's not. Food made by Hindus, who said it's made by, food made by them is najis? If your marja says that the mushrikeen, so if you follow Ayatollah Sistani, for example, right? So mushrikeen, as the Hindus would be, non-Ahlul Kitab, they're considered najis, right? If you know that food they're making, wetness is transferred, then that food would be najis, right? And then you couldn't eat that food. But if you're just going to some restaurant, and let's say you know for a fact that it's only Hindus who own it and work there. If you're just sitting at the table, and they're in the back making food, whatever it is, even if you hear the faucet on, whatever, and they come and deliver it to you, you have no knowledge whatsoever that this food became najis. You're not supposed to go in the back and start watching them washing their hands or touching stuff. You're not supposed to be doing that. If you haven't seen any wetness transfer, then we apply the principle, asalatul tahara, right? The principle is that things are tahir unless you know otherwise, for anything, right? Not just for this situation, any situation. Right? You go into a bathroom and you see a wet puddle there. Do you assume that somebody, peed on the floor? No, you don't assume that. No, you assume that it's tahir, unless you have certainty that, yeah, it actually happens to be, urine. Now, I'm not saying you have to go and, swim in it. That's not my point. But, and if it is wet, maybe just don't go stepping on it. But you're allowed to assume that it's, that it's tahir. And that is the fiqh principle that we've been taught by the imams. Islam has been really made easy for us, but somehow, one of these historical questions, somehow we came along, took that system from the imams, said, you know what, imams, this is not difficult enough. This is not strict enough, let's make this more difficult for people. Right? Let's just ruin people's lives and make it really strict. I know that all these foods are halal, imam, let's make a few things haram on people. I know their salat might be okay, but let's mess it up for people. I don't know, some people just get an enjoyment out of making life so difficult. I don't know why it's the case. But no, this is not the case that food made by them is najis. Again, if my hand is najis for whatever reason, and I make you food and you see the wetness transfer, then that food would be najis too. So it's not just the simple idea that food made by somebody who is not Ahlul Kitab, for example, is najis. No. You have to have yaqeen, itminan, certainty that wetness is transferred. You have to see it. If there's any sort of doubt whatsoever, then you're okay. There's nothing wrong with it. And again, You don't need to, nor should you be going and investigating something like that. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Okay. Last one, and then I think we'll be done for tonight. Can we pray Jama'ah Salah with Sunnis? Well, I need to know who your marja is, number one. Assuming you're in the taqleed of Ayatul Sistani, hafadahullah, it's yes and no. So, can you pray with Sunnis? Yes, you can. What are you actually doing there? So, basically, you can join them in their prayers, but you have to basically be reciting everything anyway, right? So, even if, let's say, your niyat happens to be Jamaat, whatever, you're going along with their motions, you're going to have to start reciting all the stuff anyway, right? So, for example, because they don't recite the Bismillah, right, or the Basmala for their surahs. So, you would have to recite everything. So, you can, again, you're joining them, right? So, they're starting their takbir, you do your takbir. So, you're with them in lines. You're following the movements as you would follow a normal Jama'ah prayer. The only added thing that you're really doing is now you're also adding in, you have to recite the surahs for yourself. And it's funny because some Sunni madhahib also say that even the followers in a Sunni Jamaat, they'd have to recite the surahs for themselves too. It depends on their Sunni fiqh. So you can, again, with your own marja, you can double check the specific rulings, but for Ayatul Sistani, again, as far as I remember, you can join them, just make sure that you are reciting the surahs for yourself, inshallah. I'm gonna make sure, Yusuf Uncle, that I'm getting this right? Yeah? Hasan, okay. Okay, I think that is, yeah, so that's all the Slido questions. I wanted to end it because this is going to be our last session until Ramadan, right? So, as I said, tomorrow night we'll be having a Kahoot session. You want to play? The Zoom link was on the screen. It'll be on the HIC YouTube. You'll see it there. The password again will be Kahoot2, all lowercase, but if you forget it, it's okay. We'll share it there. So that's tomorrow night, 9 p.m. On Saturday night, 9 p.m., we are having our monthly virtual chai chat with, our guest will be Sheikh Salim Bimji, right, from Canada. So our topic will be discussing how to make the Quran something, a part of us this Ramadan. So it's the Quran this Ramadan, from ritual to spiritual, right? How can we build a better relationship with the Quran? I think everybody has this question, right? We know that it's easy for us to, I don't know how easy it is, but a lot of us just want to recite it and get it finished. Okay, maybe that's a good thing, maybe it's not. Should we change our priorities? Well, we'll ask Sheikh Salim. Apparently he's somebody that spent a lot of time, he does a lot of work in Quranic studies, so we'll pick his brain. Oh, thank you for putting the flyer up there. We'll pick his brain and we'll see what he has to say, inshallah. Okay, so if I don't see you all, hopefully I'll be able to see you in the month of Ramadan. May Allah get us ready and give us the tawfiq in these last few nights of the month of Shabaan. May Allah give us the tawfiq to be able to connect our Sha'ban to Ramadan, if we get the tawfiq to maybe fast in these last few days, if we can. Hopefully we can adjust ourselves, whether it's in terms of our nutrition and our diet physically, whether it's getting ready to remove sins from ourselves so that we can make Ramadan more spiritual, whatever it is, may Allah provide all of us the tawfiq, inshallah, accept all of our a'mal from this month of Sha'ban. Inshallah, may accept all of our a'mal in the month of Ramadan, and may He make it a very successful month where hopefully, inshallah, as we, in contrast to last year, there will be a lot more of a Jamaat community feeling to it, right? So I'm hoping to see many of you for the programs, inshallah, if Allah provides us the tawfiq, so that we can finally be able to recite salah together and maybe look left and right. Although I was supposed to go through that issue, maybe I'll have to mention that in the beginning of salah when we join for that, inshallah. Okay, so we'll see you hopefully tomorrow night and then Saturday night, inshallah. Wa akhiru da'wan an alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى أهل بيت الطيبين الطاهرين والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. صلوات على محمد وآل محمد.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليك يا رسول الله، السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة النساء العالمين، السلام عليك يا حسن المجتبى، السلام عليك يا وارث آدم صفوة الله، السلام عليك يا وارث نوح النبي الله، السلام عليك يا وارث إبراهيم خليل الله. السلام عليك يا وارث موسى كليم الله. السلام عليك يا وارث عيسى روح الله. السلام عليك يا وارث محمد حبيب الله. السلام عليك يا وارث أمير المؤمنين ولي الله. السلام عليك يا ابن محمد المصطفى. السلام عليك يا ابن علي المرتضى. السلام عليك يا ابن فاطمة الزهراء. السلام عليك يا ابن خديجة الكبرى. السلام عليك يا ثار الله وابن ثاره والوتر الموتور. أشهد أنك قد أقمت الصلاة وآتيت الزكاة وأمرت بالمعروف ونهيت عن المنكر وطعت الله ورسوله حتى أتاك اليقين. فلعن الله أمة قتلت، ولعن الله أمة ظلمت، ولعن الله أمة سمعت بذلك فرضيت به. يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله، أشهد أنك كنت نورا في الأصلاب الشامخة والأرحام المطهرة، لم تنجسك الجاهلية بأنجاسها ولم تلبسك مثل حمات ثيابها. واشهد أنك من دعائم الدين واركان المؤمنين. واشهد أنك الإمام البر التقي الرضي الزكي الهادي المهدي. واشهد أن الأمة من ولدك كلمة التقوى وعلام الهدى والعروة الوثقى والحجة على أهل الدنيا. واشهد الله ملائكته وأنبياءه ورسلا أني بكم مؤمن وبيا بكم موقن بشراع ديني وخواتيم عملي، وقلبي لقلبكم سلم وأمري لأمركم متبع. صلوات الله عليكم وعلى أرواحكم وعلى أجسادكم وعلى أجسامكم وعلى شاهدكم وعلى غائبكم وعلى ظاهركم وعلى باطنكم. السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله. السلام عليك يا ابن نبي الله. السلام عليك يا ابن أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليك يا ابن الحسين الشهيد. السلام عليك أيها الشهيد وابن الشهيد. السلام عليك أيها المظلوم وابن المظلوم. لعن الله أمة قتلت، ولعن الله أمة ظلمت، ولعن الله أمة سمعت بذلك فرضيت به. السلام عليكم يا أولياء الله وحباه. السلام عليكم يا أصفياء الله وأوداه. السلام عليكم يا أنصار دين الله. السلام عليكم يا أنصار رسول الله. السلام عليكم يا أنصار أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليكم يا أنصار فاطمة سيدة النساء العالمين. السلام عليكم يا أنصار أبي محمد الحسن بن علي الولي الزكي الناصح. السلام عليكم يا أنصار أبي عبد الله. أبي أنتم وأمي طبتم وطابت الأرض التي فيها دفنتم وفزتم فوزا عظيما، فيا ليتني كنت معكم فأفوز معكم. السلام عليك يا أبا الفضل عباس بن أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليك يا ابن سيد الوصيين. السلام عليك يا ابن أول القوم إسلاما وأقدمهم إيمانا وأقومهم بدين الله وأحوطهم على الإسلام. أشهد لقد نصحت لله ولرسوله ولأخيك فالنعم أخو المواسي. فلعن الله أمة قتلت، ولعن الله أمة ظلمت، ولعن الله أمة استحلت منك المحارم وانتهكت حرمة الإسلام. فنعم الصابر المجاهد المحامي الناصر والأخ الدافع عن أخيه المجيب إلى طاعة ربه الراغب فيما زهد فيه غيره من الثواب الجزيل والثناء الجميل. والحقق الله بدرجة آبائك في جنات النعيم. السلام عليك يا أئمة المسلمين علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا صاحب الأسر والزمان سيدي الأمان الأمان الأمان. السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن. السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن. السلام عليك يا كعبة الإيمان. السلام عليك يا إمام الإنس والجان. عجل الله فرجك وسهل الله مخرجك وظهورك ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم كل وليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا وذليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك توعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. رحم الله من قرأ الفاتحة.